So, Oskar, you provided our listeners with a definition of MES, Industry 4.0, OEE. You talked a little bit about how they're related, the relationship between the three. And then when you concluded the last question I asked you, you'd mentioned that Industry 4.0 wants to get a hold of all of this, all of this data, right? This big data. So my next question then is, how do you select technologies for Industry 4.0? And I know that seems to be a pretty general question, but what does that look like? And how do you know you're in vein of this idea of Industry 4.0 and collecting big data? Do you have anything to say about selecting technologies that help you get to that end game?
Yeah, and that's a real good question and a little difficult because it has lots of answers. And those answers change rapidly. You may pick something that actually has a better way of doing it 6 months later. Or perhaps you're dealing with older equipment. Do you switch out that equipment for something better? Do you find integration methods to it? The choice you pick can determine how you want to do it. But most of it is going to be on where you're focused, right? Do you have a focused, manageable plan, right? What are you trying to get? What's that data you're trying to get out? And are you going to be able to connect to it to get it? So I want to make sure that my machines are running as much as they can all day long, that we have very few problems with the machine. Then I'm going to focus myself on that data, focus on that. I need to know a lot more about other things, maybe things that are important to what you're doing, but they don't focus on OEE. And OEE, it doesn't fit everywhere, right? If I'm assembly or something like that, I'm going to have a whole different way of looking at OEE for those type of plants. There are lots of good products here, focused on either automating the machine process or the collection of this granular machine data. These products connect to, as you mentioned, the PLCs or get electrical signals, maybe that legacy equipment that I talked about, or use other devices to accomplish this. But it's generally going to involve the work of your own engineers and other third-party integrators in a lot of cases. There are technologies. So there's an industry standard technology called OPC, Open Process Control, which was developed by machine manufacturers. And with this, you can connect machines on one side, and there are drivers for all kinds of machines. Most companies that create the PLCs, that create the machines, also have drivers to talk to standard OPC servers. And then on the other side, you have your MES or whatever other systems that need to get this data. Typically, it's a subscribe-publish model. So if there's an OPC server in the middle, I subscribe to it as part of the MES, as part of activity to this particular event. And when that data changes, it'll publish that message back to me. So now Factivity can map that to an action that Factivity does. You can also read these, so you can just pull this data all day long if you want information. So the OPC server is a nice method to do these kind of connections.
So is it, Oskar, it's not so much getting too caught up, as you'd mentioned. I mean, technology changes very quickly and, emerging technologies and especially with the evolution of AI. And so it's not so much getting caught up in the technology, perhaps, as it is just really understanding where your organization wants to go and understanding exactly what that looks like and what data you want to collect, and then finding the right tools to help you get to that end game. Now, that's not to say, clearly the technologies, change and can have a substantial impact on your ability to timely and effectively and efficiently get that data and manage that data and so forth. But I think part of what you just said is it's not only important in understanding the technologies that help you meet the end game of Industry 4.0, but it's just being clear about what it is you're after to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you don't take a focus on it, then I think you're just going to have lots of data that for most of what you're trying to look at is meaningless, or you may not know how to interpret it to actually mean something. Industry 4.0 is not a checklist. Okay, it's not like I can say, I've checked off Industry 4.0 and the 3 items that make up Industry 4.0. It just doesn't exist that way. You talked about Industry 5.0. Is there truly a 5.0 yet, or is it just marketing, right? Some say that about 4.0. It's just a marketing to sell product. Maybe it'll help sell us.